Audio unearthed from 2011, unearthed by CNN, has Alabama U.S. Senate candidate Roy Moore saying he thinks America would be better off if it eliminated every constitutional amendment of the last 200 years. Take a listen.
Personally, I would like to see an amendment that says all the amendments after 10.
Yes. That would eliminate many problems. You know, people don't understand how some of these amendments have completely tried to wreck the form of government that our forefathers intended.
Moore's campaign spokesman told CNN that Moore does not believe all amendments after the 10th should be eliminated. The interview also included Moore quoting Adolf Hitler when asked about Barack Obama's birth certificate, saying, you know, Hitler once said, you tell a big enough lie long enough, people to believe it. And that's the problem. We've got to look at simple facts of the case. The host also asked Moore about new hearings about, quote, what really happened on 9/11. Moore responded, well, I think they need to explore that. Yes, but it's something that's already done, and now we have to live with the consequences.
So, Eddie, hard to figure out exactly where to start here, but I think starting with, again, you go back and see what we've seen over the past week or two of some of these older clips now that people are looking even closer. He believes that the 13th and the 14th Amendments should be done away with, which, of course, were the amendments after the Civil War that ended slavery. Of course, he also, a quote came out last week where he said that when was America last great again? A single black audience member asked him. He responded back, well, you know, during times of slavery, families were closer together. Vladimir Putin talking about how, you know, America is the center of evil in the world, and Putin, you know, may be more of a kindred spirit of him than, I mean, these actually show why so many people, like myself, who would normally vote for a conservative, thought that Roy Moore was unqualified even before the Washington Post started putting out these stories about very young teenage girls.
And see, for you, Joe, there is not an opposition between being conservative and being decent. And one of the things that we need to conclude is that Roy Moore, based on the positions he takes, isn't a decent fellow.
Well, but he's not conservative.
Yeah, I mean, I know, but I just want to say, so he's not decent.
Let me just say, for my conservative friends who are listening, they would tell you that being against the 13th and 14th Amendment is not conservative.
Right.
Aligning with Putin is not conservative. Now, that's something Donald Trump does,
right,
but that's not what conservatives do. Conservatives don't see America as the root of evil in the world. We actually think America is great, and we know that we've fed and freed more people on this planet than any other country in the history of mankind. We're kind of proud to be Americans. Roy Moore is not. Donald Trump's not.
So that's the first claim I wanted to make, and you've just clarified it. There's no
conservatives don't believe in getting rid of the 13th and 14th.
Let's not forget the 19th Amendment, too, just for the sake of
exactly.
For the sake of the women at the table, let's not forget about that one.
And then the second point I wanted to make, Joe, really quickly, is that you grew up in Pensacola. I grew up in Moss Point, Mississippi.
Moss Point.
We've seen this kind of American madness before. We know what this is. We know exactly what it is. We know exactly who Roy Moore is. We've seen it.
Right.
That person, right, has been a part of my landscape since I was a young man. Right. Since I was a young boy. I know what he's doing. I know who he is. And I think if we need to call him for who he is and for what he is, he's a bigot. And he's a bigot who's running for the U.S. Senate, and he's a pedophile. And once we name him as those two things, right, then maybe we could say that those who are willing to support him, we might need to question whether or not they're decent, too, going back to my first point.
And the only thing that I've been grappling with this weekend is how this guy wins. Because if he does win, then everything that I've been telling myself for the past 54 years about a new South that has moved forward, that has moved on, may actually not be the case. And I've got to say, I've said this before to people, and they didn't believe me, but I was there, they weren't. I was born in Doraville, Georgia. And then we moved to Meridian, Mississippi. It's kind of deep south. We lived in Pensacola, Florida. Very proud to call it the Redneck Riviera and call it home. Redneck Riviera, Pensacola, Florida. It is home. And I went to school in Tuscaloosa, Alabama for 4 years. I love those people. I love them. And then I went down to Gainesville, Florida, still sort of southern part. And I was a middle class guy that hung out with working class kids and middle class kids. I never heard, I just didn't in 54 years, never heard my friends make racist comments or racially insensitive comments. I just didn't. I mean, maybe on the playground when, we were 5, 6, 7, 8 in Mississippi. But even then, the teachers would grab them by the ears, yank them to the office, and throw them in the office. That's why I don't understand how they vote for this man on Tuesday.
I think the focus group explains the pedophile claim, which I think is actually stirring up votes for Roy Moore. It's stirring up anger. But I really do.
Can I ask really quickly, because you grew up in the South too, am I naive?
To a certain extent, yes. Yeah. I think there's a sense in which one of the beautiful things and one of the beautifully tragic things about the country is that there is a kind of innocence and willful ignorance that happens on one side of the tracks about why there are tracks in the first place. Right? And I say tracks in the South because that's usually what divides the black side of town from the white side of town. And when you're on the white side of town, everything is normalized. Everything is normal. It's like oxygen, right? And the reality of the black side of town is just that's over there, right? And so I remember when we moved from one side of Moss Point to the other. And my dad was the second African American hired at the post office in Pascagoula, Mississippi, because I grew up in Trent Lott's district.
Right.
We bought this house in Briarwood, and I was playing with those old Tonka trucks. Remember those old Tonka trucks?
Oh, yeah.
And all of a sudden I heard, "Stop playing with that N-word."
Yeah.
And I had to grab my truck and walk inside. And my dad, who's a Vietnam vet, went out and handled his business. But the idea of this not happening, it happened to me when I was 8 years old.
Yeah.
And I had a real striking experience there. And it's part of the oxygen of the South. But to be honest with you, it's not just the South. Oftentimes we want to make that region bear the burden of the nation's national sin.
Right now
it's
the
America's
spotlight
madness.
is there.
It's not the South's madness.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.